I can only imagine that Matt Barrows of The Athletic, who joins us now on the River Islands guest line, will not only know that it happened, but he will know the amount that the San Francisco 49ers paid to the other driver and the police officers in order to keep this all quiet. Is that accurate, Matt?
Not only that, they went around with a neuralizer like in Men in Black, and all the pedestrians and other drivers in the vicinity got neuralized so that it just basically erased their memories of the whole incident.
Fantastic.
Yeah, collected phones, I'm sure, and all of the surveillance cameras that are in and about Palo Alto have been commandeered, and even the black box in the Tesla, Matt. As you know, these cars, they have them. I'm sure they were able to pry that thing out and destroy it as well.
Yeah, it's all about, weather balloons and gas explosions. That kind of explains the commotion on Elma Avenue that day.
Man, I'm glad you're finally speaking some truth. I mean, when you got a guy like Kyle Shanahan who has built up absolutely no trust with the public, has such a huge history of nefarious behavior, it makes sense, Matt, don't you think?
Yeah, he's like Al Capone, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole organization is like the mafia. Right.
Matt, were you in his office today when he talked about, his rendition of what he remembers from the event?
Yes, I was one of a handful of reporters who were summoned on, what was a dark media day. There wasn't supposed to be any media there, and we got text, I'd say around 10 o'clock this morning that says, hi, Kyle wants to talk to you in his office. Can you get here ASAP? And we assembled and we went into his office, and he wanted to clear the air as to what happened on July 14 in Palo Alto.
How does he look, Matt? I don't, I know that the media is not allowed at the moments where he's watching practice. How does he look after all of this?
I mean, physically, he looks fine, and he commented on that. And in fact, he showed us all a picture of him, his face, shortly after the accident, and it's brutal. I mean, swollen up beyond recognition, brutal. A big gash over his right eye that hadn't been closed yet. Took 40 stitches to do that. His nose is puffed up. He looked like he was in, a 16-round bout with Mike Tyson. I mean, it was, like I said, unrecognizable. He joked at one point during the conversation that he's got the best plastic surgeon in the world because you really can't tell at this point. Now, he's got a cast on his hand and he's got broken ribs, but as far as his face, you have to examine it pretty closely to see the marks. So, whoever did the stitch work at Stanford Hospital, and it wasn't his own plastic surgery, he's joking about that. It's whoever was on duty there, but they did a remarkable job stitching him back together. His joke, he's sporting the full mustache these days. And he said that his friends and acquaintances have joked that it was the mustache that absorbed the impact and saved him in the crash.
Was he able to, let you guys know how long he was in the hospital? Was he able to be released that day?
Yeah, he was in the hospital a matter of hours. I think it was a significant number of hours. I think he said something from 8 to 10. So what happened was that he was involved in the crash. He's bleeding from the face. Paramedics arrive, but he's already talked to Mandy, his wife, at this point, and asked her to come down to the scene. So he didn't want to leave the scene before she got there. So he had them hold the ambulance until she arrived, and then they went to the hospital. And he said, he never lost consciousness. He remembers every detail of the crash, and he remembers being stitched up, which, involved very intimate, painful work on his eye and his face. So that was all very kind of surreal to him, and also very real. I mean, he was a part of it. Usually a traumatic event like that, you're knocked unconscious or you're given anesthesia, but he was stitched up and was awake for all of it. And poor Mandy was witness to all of it as well.
Oh, my gosh. Matt Barrows, The Athletic. Look, Matt, you've got your own platform. You're able to share this wherever, but I'd love it if you would kind of take us through what this has been like through the eyes of a 49er beat writer who, for the last 72 hours, have basically been dragged around because of the way that information flowed in this whole story.
Yeah, it happened at a unique time of year. July 14 is when everyone is on vacation. Me included, and Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff included, and all of the players. Nobody had reported to training camp at that point. Later in the week, the rookies reported and the coaches reported at the same time. So if this had happened on October 14, the news would have gotten out very quickly because the players would have been privy to it. And when players are privy to it, their agents are privy to it. And the agents are the knitting circle of the NFL. Once an agent gets a hold of it, it's out there. They'll tell other GMs, other teams, media members, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's got their guys. But it happened at a time that nobody puts it out. And now everyone's saying, well, it's a public report. Why didn't any reporters get the report? It's not as if Palo Alto PD or Milpitas PD or San Jose PD send those things out to reporters. You would, and for traffic accidents, and remember that no charges were filed, no one was cited in this. It's even more hidden. It's not an official report. It's not made public unless you are one of the people involved in that crash. That's the only way you can obtain the accident report. So that's the reason it didn't come out for X amount of days. Now Shanahan went out of his way to say that he told maybe 24 people, his close associates, friends, family, what happened, and none of them shared it with anybody. And I think that they didn't share it with anybody because it was such a severe, serious event. I think, the 49ers certainly could have put it out there. That's the other way it would get out. I think that they were waiting to see whether he would be, up in front and center on Saturday, the beginning of training camp, to kind of talk about it himself. And when it was clear that he wouldn't be, and that, it would just be John Lynch at the press conference and it would be Chris Furster running practices, that's when they decided to put it out. I mean, that to me is where I don't want to say lay the blame, but if you're upset for some reason that you didn't hear about it on July 14, that's the reason.
So when the rookies report, and you guys are there for at least portions of it, was there any talk amongst the group of reporters that you hadn't seen Kyle out there?
Well, no, everyone learned about it ahead of that press conference, and we reported the news at that point. But it was before the press conference began. So that was Saturday. That's the opening press conference, and then the first practice is Sunday. And we actually did see Kyle Shanahan. He came out maybe 45 minutes into the session, after the point where we have to put away our phones and we can't film anything. He came out and he watched the team portion of practice, 11 on 11, with John Lynch. John Lynch always stands deep in the defensive backfield like a safety would, and watches practice from that vantage point. And Shanahan has joined him there on Sunday and Monday.
Matty Barrows, The Athletic, on the Niner Beat, joining us here, Willard and Dibbs. Hey, what about some football questions? What do you think?
Oh, is there football going on these days? I didn't even realize.
Camp opened. Hey, just because this was top of mind yesterday, you think the Niners will get involved in the Vita Vea situation now that he's requested a trade?
I don't think so, because it's, I think one of the 49ers soft spots, shall we say, is that they've got a lot of guys in their 30s, and Vita Vea would be another one of those guys. So I don't think that they'd want to spend a big chunk of their salary cap on another guy who's that age, after, basically all of their stars, save Fred Warner, who's 29, Nick Bosa's 28. I forget how old Brock Purdy is, but everyone else, the Kittles, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, all those guys are in their 30s now. So it's a team that's getting a little bit older. And I think that, defensive line would be the one spot where they might add somebody. I really believe that defensive end is more of an issue right now than defensive tackle is. Having said that, Vita Vea is a great player. I'm sure Osa Odighizuwa would love to play next to him. It would free up Odighizuwa for more sacks, more tackles, more everything. But that's who the 49ers decided to spend on at the position. I don't think that they would spend on two guys there.
What are you hearing about the status of George Kittle as he works his way toward possibly being ready for the opener?
Yeah, he's close. I mean, you see him come out for practice, and he's, chatting, dapping up, dancing with other players. He's active. He's doing everything in his power to get ready. I'm a little bit skeptical because it just seems like, back in the winter and the spring, in terms of injuries and projections, everyone's very optimistic. And it's, Mykal Williams is going to be ready at the beginning of training camp. And, this guy and that guy are going to be ready as well. And I think when you get into the reality of training camp in the summer, it's a little bit more pessimistic, or rather they're a little bit more cautious. And the 49ers have to have a little bit of added caution with Kittle because they've got this trip to Australia, which not only kind of kicks off the season a few days earlier than normal, it means that they're going to Australia about a week ahead of that game. So it cuts down that timeline by more than a week. So the timeline was, if he does everything right and we get lucky, he might be able to be ready for week one. Now week one essentially starts a week earlier in a lot of respects. So it was already tight, and now it's tighter. I personally am skeptical. I think it would be probably more prudent for him to not make that trip. Why rush it? Why put him, who's still recovering, through that big trip and practicing in an odd spot and playing in a different place, et cetera, et cetera. My guess is that they'll err on the side of caution and he won't play. But I absolutely could be wrong on that.
Matt, is there reason to believe that Dre Greenlaw will look like his former self this year?
There is. I mean, he looks like his former self in these first two practices. I mean, he's to stay with the Australia theme, he's like the Tasmanian devil out there. I mean, they have to tell him to slow down. He's a whirling dervish, and he's got that in him. Now, whether he can sustain that through 17 games, I think that's a very good question, because he hasn't been able to do that for several years now, and not just Achilles season, and not just last season with the Broncos. He was laboring through previous seasons as well at times. So he has had a lot of time to recover. Hasn't played a lot of games in the last 2 years, but this is someone who plays at 1,000,000 miles an hour all the time. He doesn't have another gear. So the question is whether his body can sustain that over time. And if the answer is no, I think that the 49ers are liking what they're seeing so far from Nick Martin, who's a bit of a forgotten guy. He was a third-round pick last year, didn't play a lot, and suffered a concussion, I believe, on November 30, and never played again. He's looked good in camp so far as well. He's sort of a natural weak side linebacker. He resembles Greenlaw in a lot of ways, sort of stature, speed, etc. My guess is that they see him as the long-term replacement for Greenlaw.
Matt, real quick, because it was a famous line last year in camp that calves are tricky. While we're talking about Juwan Jennings and everything, and I know that Christian Kirk suffered a strained calf early on in camp here. What does that mean for his camp this month, and what does it mean for Dejon Stribling when the year starts, you think?
Yeah, it's not good for Christian Kirk because calves are tricky, and especially when, like I said, you're kind of approaching your 30th birthday and you've had injury issues in the past. I don't think that he's going to be back anytime soon. I don't know if he's going to miss all of camp, but he's going to miss a chunk of camp. He doesn't need it as much as Dejon Stribling, as much as the Jordan Watkins. But the pecking order gets established now, and what it means is that the Watkins, the Jacob Cowings, the Striblings on the team are all getting slightly more snaps per practice, and I think that Stribling is really benefiting from it. I think he's gaining the trust of Brock Purdy, of Mac Jones. Neither of them are hesitant to go his way. He's a nice big target who uses his hands and his arms to create space, and then is good with the ball in his hands afterwards. So that's what you want. That's what you're looking for. He's a natural fit in that slot position, which is what Juwan Jennings played a lot of because he is a good blocker. He's very strong. His blocking tape, run blocking tape from Ole Miss last year is pretty impressive. I mean, it looks like a Juwan Jennings highlight tape. He's not drawing the penalties from opponents that Juwan Jennings. I was watching the wild card game against the Eagles was on TV last night, and there was Jennings, just going at it with Eagles players, and at one point drawing a illegal contact penalty from one of the Eagles defenders. He was great at that, just getting under your skin. I don't know if Dejon Stribling has that personality, but he definitely has the kind of the physical skills to knock a guy on his butt.